This episode of The Catholic Money Show is sponsored by Catholic All Year. Is being debt-free as financially savvy as it sounds? Listen in and find out on today's episode of The Catholic Money Show. We're going to begin this episode with a little bit of a throwback to the summer of, I want to say, 2012 or 2013.
It was early days in our
quite place
marriage.
And I remember where we were. We were at Focus New Staff Training. Although we weren't new staff anymore. We were kind of helping to train.
Doing some of the training.
The new staff. We were down in Ave Maria, Florida. And I remember this in so much detail because it was also a summer where we were really struggling in our infertility battle. Mm-hmm. And I constantly had to keep going back to Naples for this, that, and the other blood work. And it was a really difficult summer in many respects. And one of my releases of stress was going on this old forum, chat room. I don't know what it was.
A message board.
A message board in the Dave Ramsey community.
Back in the day when they had that.
Back in the day. An old message board where I kind of made friends with all these other people that were geeking out about personal finance. And YNAB, You Need a Budget, was kind of the new upcoming budget software. So I had all these online pals that I was making in these forums. And there was always this guy. He was older than me. I think he was in his 50s or 60s. And he was kind of this ultimate sage. That was his role in the community.
Yeah.
People would come in with a question or a situation, and he would always come in with this absolute Yoda-like wisdom. And he kind of became, one of his isms became a known phrase. People would even call him in, tag him to come in and say the thing. And it was always this: you're never doing as well as you think you are until you are on the other side of a full rainy day fund or a full established emergency fund. And that all these people coming in here saying, woo, I'm debt free. Yeah. That should be celebrated. But you should still have holy fear in yourself.
Yes.
Because you are not doing as well as you think you are until you get to the other side of your full rainy day fund. That was always his ism. And it was a little bit of a wet blanket of what do you mean? I just climbed the mountain. I broke out of debt. I paid the student loans. I'm done with Visa. I got the medical bills. Why are you cutting me off of the knees here in my celebration? And it was for good reason. It was always for good reason. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode.
Yes. It's very exciting to get out of debt. Don't hear us wrong. It's awesome.
We celebrate that day every year, the anniversary.
That's right. And if you are working to get out of debt, keep working at it. We're not telling you that it's a dumb thing to go after. You certainly should. And when you do become debt-free, you should celebrate it.
100%.
But you can't let that be the end of the road.
Many it is.
It's celebrating, but it's not winning the World Series. The season continues after the fact.
So what would you say?
Becoming debt-free is maybe winning the division.
Winning the division, and
right?
now you have
celebrate. There's some champagne. You get a special T-shirt, but you need to keep going, or else what are you doing? You're not really going to cross that finish line right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a false summit.
It is, yes.
I agree. And we're going to talk about why that is. So why is that? Why are you not doing as well as you think you are until you're on the other side of a full rainy day fund? And what we mean by a full rainy day fund is 4 to 6 months of expenses saved up and set aside for emergencies only. Emergencies only. Okay?
Only emergencies.
Only emergencies. So you'd look at, your household expenses on any given month, and let's say the worst should happen. You lose your income, all of it, part of it. Somebody has a medical crisis and can't work right now. You don't have any paid leave. This would be the scenario where you would project out what would you need to stay afloat for a month and times that by 4 to 6. Okay? That's kind of that full rainy day fund that we're recommending. Why are you not doing as well? First off, I would say is because once you become debt-free, if you only still have, what we teach people in our money milestones is that before becoming debt-free, you should have a starter rainy day fund of $1,000, as well as being a month ahead of your money. So you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you have a month worth of money in your bank account before the month begins as you go into that month. It makes budgeting a whole lot easier, but it also gives you a little bit of cushion room as kind of a custom, really small emergency fund. So everybody would have $1,000 plus whatever their custom family would need. So a single bachelor just graduating college might only need $2,500 set aside, but a family of 10, well, they might need $9,000 for the month or more. And so that you'd have that amount. But then if something was to come up and you were debt free and it was like the car blew up and you needed, you really needed to get a new one or something, some catastrophic thing came up. You are one emergency away from having to go back into debt.
Yes.
Is the reality.
And this is why we have seen so many folks over the years, they get out of debt and you get back into debt. And you get out, you're back in, you're out, and they have, 10 different get out of debt anniversaries because they stopped there. They thought that was the finish line instead of continuing down the journey to better their financial situation.
Yeah.
And I think we know this, so that if you are, debt free and you've crossed the finish line, but you stop there, it can weigh on you a little bit of, I know, yeah, all right, we did that good thing, but oh boy, I'm looking around, like, ooh, just dodged that bullet, just dodged that one. One of these days, it's going to catch me.
Yeah. One of these days, the furnace is going out.
And you need to be ready for that day. And you're not ready until you have that full rainy day fund in place. And then, wow, it does feel good. Now, it's not exciting.
Well, I just want to tease that out a little bit more.
Okay.
I will say this. We have been on both sides of without a full rainy day fund, as we were saving up for it, or maybe as we've had to use it. And then we've been on the other side of having a full rainy day fund. We've been on both sides several times, and that is normal in your lifetime. You're going to kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, you'll end up using it.
When you don't have a full rainy day fund, you can trick yourself into feeling like, I'm fine, we're good, there's no stress, like, we're going to be fine, there's not going to be any financial things that pop up. That's you tricking yourself. Once you get on the other side of the full rainy day fund, there is something that relaxes in you that you almost didn't know possible. You didn't know it was there. You didn't really, your brain was trying to deal with the anxiety by telling you we're fine.
Yeah.
But then you're fine, and there's something that just washes over you that brings tremendous peace. Tremendous peace.
Yeah, because finally, we're set. We got this. If something comes up, all right, it comes up. We move on. So it is something that brings so much more peace to you as you move on. I'd say also it's really helpful to have in place because it helps build virtue. It's like if you get here. Now, maybe it could happen, you get a windfall, an inheritance, whatever it is. And if you wisely put it towards your goal, and your goal happens to be the full rainy day fund, that's great. But most of the time, it doesn't work that way. And you have to save it up bit by bit. After already running the go get debt-free race and getting a little tired, this helps. It's a way of once the full rainy day fund is in place, it's almost like it's evidence of the financial virtue that you've built up in yourself, because you were able to get that far. You kept going. You remained disciplined. You kept on a goal. You achieved it, and you're at this place where you're experiencing this peace.
Yeah, and I would say getting out of debt can build virtue. I mean, you're
Absolutely.
making the sacrifices. You are, spending in moderation. There's so many different virtues that you are practicing while you're becoming debt-free. Again, you mentioned unless if you received a windfall or you won the lottery and you just paid your debt off instantly, there's really no virtue there. In some ways, you should be scared because people that get their debt wiped out without having to have climbed out will almost always walk right back into it because they didn't fix the situation that led them to debt in the first place. So but if you clawed your way out of debt, you certainly built the virtue. But it came with a slice of reward, because every single time you paid off a debt, things light up in your brain. You're excited. Woohoo! I slayed a giant. And it feels good to do it. When you fill the rainy day fund, there are no slaying of the giant moments. There isn't somebody ready to pat you on the back and say, well done. You just have to keep going. You just have to persevere. And that's where it's almost like an acid test of your financial virtue. I say that St. Jose Maria Escriva talks about acid tests of your virtue or your lack of virtue. But I would liken this to, if you were comping it to the prayer life, right? Getting out of debt, is that beginning prayer life where you're just receiving all these consolations and it's legitimate prayer, right? You're just receiving all of these gifts and consolations from the Lord to keep you coming back, right? And then after a while in the journey, he kind of drops you and it's dried up. And that's where people talk about the dark night of the soul or, some version of it where it's dry and it's arid, but you keep choosing prayer because now you're not going to prayer because it feels good or you got a little warm fuzzy. You're going because you love God and that's your only motive. And it doesn't have to feel good in order to show up for. That would be more akin to the saving for the full rainy day fund. You're now in this thing, you're committed, and now you're seeing it through. And once you are on that other side, you've had an identity shift. You've completely had an identity shift. You're now someone, that you are someone who manages your money wisely, prudently, and you're a good steward. And even though you've been stepping in that direction all the time, this is that final mark. I would say there's a real line in the sand moment on the other side of this money milestone. It's now, firm evidence that this is my identity now.
Yes. Now, getting there, what you talk about, it can be a little slow, a little boring, right? It's not as exciting. You're not ticking off this list of people you owe money to. And so how can you keep going? How do you get there? How do you build that virtue? One way to do it practically is just to create those mini milestones. Maybe you keep a tracker on there, and it's a little thermometer or whatever it is. And as you're getting closer, maybe you mark off, you want to say for 5 months of expenses. So you got 5 tick marks on there. So you're going to do, you're going to celebrate a little bit every time you see another month that you've got in the bank. Or a certain dollar amount. You can go every $5,000 or 10 or whatever it is. You can create these checkpoints. Checkpoints along your journey, which in a way simulate the paying off of the debts as you go on. And if you are going to do this, I'd say you might as well just try to steal completely from that Stack and Attack playbook and make those checkpoints a little bit closer together at the beginning, where you're going to need a little bit more encouragement to keep going, and then you can space them out a little bit more as you're moving along towards your goal.
Yeah, and you want to build in some mini celebrations. And then the celebration at the end should be the most special of all and be larger and bigger and more celebratory. But yeah, these checkpoints that you get to should unlock a certain reward or something exciting. And speaking of shark mode, we encourage people when they're getting out of debt to take advantage of shark mode, to stay in this as short as reasonably possible.
Yes.
You really do not want to have a slog of a drug out saving for your rainy day fund season, because there aren't as many rewards and warm fuzzies. It is just prudent to just go crazy and get this thing wrapped up. Maybe even harder, because sometimes it's less amount of money than the debt you were going after anyway, depending on the situation. But it's just wise to wrap this sucker up faster than you can say Bob's your uncle. Because the chances of you getting tired or bored are higher. And so you just need to get on getting this done.
Yes, that's right. Because you need it in place, right? The more time you take to get it, well, the more time goes by, and odds are you'll run into an emergency. So I'd rather you have this in place before it comes along instead of after.
Now, it's a legitimate question to ask yourself. What do I do when there's an emergency and I need to use this full rainy day fund? We're going to answer that question when we come back from this message from our sponsor. Imagine for a second what your family life would look like if you lived out the beautiful and rich traditions of the Catholic faith. Do you see a family completely transformed by their full participation in the faith? As Catholic parents, that's our ultimate goal, to raise a family full of saints. But maybe you're wondering how you can add one more thing on top of the many other tasks and activities that already take up your available time and energy. At Catholic All Year, they believe in starting small, especially with conversation at the dinner table, and its ability to ignite the fire of faith within your family. Liturgical living in the home is their absolute favorite way to create a strong family culture and Catholic identity, to learn about the faith and to catechize the people they love. Plus, it's really fun. With your family in mind, they created the Catholic All Year membership, which makes it easy for you to bring the Catholic faith into your busy everyday life. Through the Catholic All Year membership, you'll discover prayers and hymns, liturgically inspired recipes and activities, all curated to help your family rediscover the goodness our faith has to offer outside your Sunday obligation. Plus, each membership includes monthly discounts and free shipping from the Catholic All Year marketplace. Take the first step in living more liturgically with your family and become a member at walletwin.com/Catholic All Year.
Welcome back. So what do you do when the emergency comes, when it's raining outside and you got to get that umbrella out and use the rainy day fund?
You use it.
You
use
That's
it.
That's what it's there for.
No, I'm going to give you permission. There are some people out there who will go into debt to protect their full rainy day fund. I kid you not. They want to.
That's crazy.
The people that are just deep savers, they'd rather put it on a credit card than touch their perfect fund.
That makes no
Absolutely
sense.
not. It doesn't, but I'm telling you, there's people out there like that. And
Don't be like those people.
Don't be like that. Just because it feels like my precious.
Yeah, nobody can touch my hoard.
Yeah, and that they'll have a pile that they go raid before they get to the hoard. It's just that it's there for you to use in emergencies. But again, let's reiterate, what's an emergency? Is this there was a cool trip I wanted to take? Is this I wanted to send my kid to summer camp? No, these are not emergencies. Is this the car completely exploded and I need to get a new one and somehow insurance isn't covering it? Or there's a gap? Yes.
Yeah. Someone important in your life passes away and you need to fly across the country to go to the funeral?
Yep.
Yeah.
You lost a job? Of course. These are emergencies, but in these situations, you use it. But then as soon as you're done using it, the emergency is wrapping up, right? Because anytime you enter in an emergency mode, sometimes it's a self-contained emergency. Oh, the hot water heater blew and we just need to get a new one. Or, oh, the air conditioner went out. We just need to get a new one. Well, the emergency is fairly contained to a couple of week window. A job loss, a little different. The idea would be that as you're using it, you are getting a plan so that you don't have to use all of it, right? You're getting a plan in place so you don't run out. But let's assume in both of these situations, the emergencies kind of come to an end.
Yes.
What is the goal now?
Well, now you look towards the wallet win method, the financial phases, the money milestones, and you see, oh, I don't have full rainy day fund checked off anymore. It's not full. All right, boom. So wherever you've gotten towards, let's back it up a little bit. And we're going to focus now on this new goal of the full rainy day fund. You're going to fill that back up. Depending on what happened, maybe it takes a month. Maybe it takes half a year. Who knows? But that is your goal now. You just kind of pretend like you're just working your way through from the beginning, and now you're on this one, just like you were last time. So this becomes your financial goal. And if you want, you can shift back down into shark mode to build that sucker back up and get back on with your life.
Yeah. And when you mean like shark mode is making it go quickly, but it could also mean picking up odd jobs, selling off things. I mean, again, it's like you want you to feel like, yeah, my hair's on fire. I want to get this done. I want to be on the other side of this. When you enter into that full replenish mode, use it when you need it. But when you go back into replenish mode, go quick. And we've had enough times now where we've kind of dipped back and, we've been on this journey for, goodness, how many years now? 12, 13? Yeah. Almost, as long as we've been married. And so we've had a number of times where we've had to dip into the rainy day fund and then come back and replenish. And the times where we don't, it's just the worst. Or we let it drag. Yeah. It's just, it's no good. And Jonathan knows I get grumpy. I didn't say it. I get very grumpy. And it's just not worth it for you anymore to have me barking at you. Amanda, no thanks. To get this done. Because I just don't rest well. I don't rest well until it's complete. Yeah. It's true. So anytime we have this as a goal, we just want to go as quickly as we possibly can. And we're willing to cut as many things as possible to make that happen quickly. Absolutely. All right. Now we talked, I think maybe the main part of this episode, the main thing we want you to take away from this episode of the Catholic Money Show is the full rainy day fund. Super important. Being debt-free, getting rid of those debts, moving beyond that, understanding your finances, having the plan so you don't fall back into the debt, all that stuff. Yes, 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 and yes. Because we want you to do all that and have this full rainy day fund in place for all the reasons we just said. And if you don't remember them, just rewind a little bit and listen again. There's another reason, though, why there's more to the story than just being debt-free. What if I told you that debt-free doesn't always mean that you're in a good financial position? What are you talking about? I know, because over the last 20 or 30 years, being debt-free has been kind of worshipped as the golden calf, as the end goal. If I can just get debt-free, I will have made it. But we just talked about how, no, you haven't. You got to keep going. Just being debt-free in and of itself is not necessarily a great financial position. It could be, but it also could represent a very volatile or insecure financial position. Because when people kind of cling to and worship just debt-free for debt-free's sake, what they oftentimes will fail to consider there is that cash flow is just as important to consider. And what I mean by cash flow is money coming in. Let's say you were debt-free, right? But you don't have an income. Well, does being debt-free really do you any good? Does it really do you any good? Does it put food on the table? Does it put gas in the tank? It doesn't really. It's helpful to be debt-free when you have a tight income because you don't have all these additional payments. Sure. That's a great thing. But just being debt-free in and of itself cannot solve if you have a cash flow crisis, if you do not earn enough, if you don't have the income that you need to provide for yourself and those entrusted to your care. And I think sometimes they get a little bit mixed up and people focus so much on just gotta get debt free that they neglect to consider the other side of the equation, that you also need income coming in and that's just as important as being debt free. I would say we learned this the hard way.
As we've learned many things.
And I wouldn't say it was anything we did on purpose. But yeah, when was the first time that you kind of realized, oh, just because we're debt free, it doesn't translate immediately to financial security in this unique situation? I wrote it down in the show notes if you're looking for the example.
I was going to say, well, you said the first time. So I was like, oh, I don't know what the first time was.
No, I wrote it down, the big example.
Well, yeah, the big example, maybe the first time it was really big was when we were starting Wallet Win. And up to that point, we had been debt-free so much.
For years, yeah.
And thinking about that, and that was like the one criteria for a financial decision was, is it debt-free, or with the mortgage for the house, is it as low as possible? Can we make our down payment as high as possible? And we had just moved from Colorado, where the houses are way more expensive, so we had a fair bit of cash coming into things. And so we put down like half for the down payment. It wasn't 10%, it wasn't 20%, it was 50% or more. Because we thought that was the wise thing to do.
And at the time,
and now, of course, some of this would require a crystal ball and all that business to tell the future.
We didn't know that we were going to be starting a business 6 months after purchasing our home.
And when you start a business, it's really helpful for that business to have a little bit of money to spend on things.
Yes.
Or to pay the people like ourselves who are working in it. So if we would have thought, what if we have this opportunity here? What could we do? Maybe we would end up with a different mortgage, or maybe a different house. Who knows?
We would have put a little bit less down,
instead
so we could
of
have had some in the
throwing
business.
everything to have as little total debt as possible. What if we held back a little bit to use on this other project too? We didn't think about that at all.
No, and we should have, because we knew Wallet Win was going to be something we launched eventually. Yeah, but we were worshiping at as little as debt as possible. And I don't really say that in a religious term. We weren't actually, there was not a false God. But that was our highest end all criteria.
We're just like, oh yeah, that was like maybe the only question, the only thing to consider.
And honestly, we went through more pain than was necessary. Had we maybe had $15,000 or $20,000 more on a mortgage, on our 3% mortgage, it really wouldn't have made a big difference mortgage-wise in the very end, but it would have made a lot of a difference on our business. And, we had to eat into our emergency fund that very first year, and a little bit of extra cash to put into the business would have made a big deal. Now, you never know, right? By not having that, maybe we were scrappier. Maybe we were more curious about how we could make things possible. At the end of the day, God was in all the details, but if we could go back and redo it again, and we ever have a situation like that again, we will not just say, what is the least amount of debt I could possibly take? We will be far more balanced in, okay, we want to protect a little bit of the emergency fund. We don't want to take out more debt than we need, but we also want to have some cash to jumpstart whatever business opportunity the Lord's asking us to also take action on. Very prudent, balanced approach that values both cash flow as well as debt freedom and keeping that emergency fund intact if possible. So I think business owners are the ones who run into this probably more than others, because at the end of the day, your debt-free life is not going to put dinner on the table. We had some friends who actually had the paid-off mortgage.
Yeah,
they sacrificed heavily to do that. And then they went and they had started a business and they have this incredibly high net worth, but the business wasn't performing at the level that they needed it to in the early days. And so they were in that exact same situation of where being debt-free was not the panacea. It wasn't just the cure-all to every single financial stressor or worry. You have to pay attention to, I think it's prudent to be both debt-free when possible, but also paying attention to cash flow. And that just matters.
Yeah, and it's a balance here, folks. Yes, avoid debt whenever possible, but that can't be the only thing you ever look into. There's more to your financial life, and we need to make sure that when we're making our decisions, maybe taking that into consideration, we have to think about the domino effect there. What else is that going to make possible? And it might, or make harder, make impossible, and it might do that as well. So it's I don't know about a plea, but a plea to just zoom out a little bit more and see more of what's going on. And I think most of the time you're never going to want to go rack up debt or make yourself owe more than you would need to. But let's just look back and see more of the context in our financial situations.
We've talked about this in other episodes too, of unproductive debt, most debt, or productive debt. Debt that's actually allowing a higher cash flow in your life than it's costing you. That's what we're talking about here when it comes to a mortgage or maybe one of these other opportunities. The end goal would not just be that you're just in debt. It would be a leverage point for you to actually create the income or the cash flow in that situation.
Yeah. So whether you are looking to get out of debt, whether you're looking to grow that full rainy day fund, anything along your financial journey, I think joining Catholic Money Academy would be a really great move. Not only are you going to learn all about each of the money milestones and the financial phases of the Wallet Win method, but also it's chock full of other goodies, trackers that you can use to see your progress, to stay excited, to build that endurance and that virtue on your financial journey. You can join today at walletwin.com/academy. That's walletwin.com/academy. And I hope to see you inside.
I do too. And if this episode has been a blessing to you, please share it with others. And if you could, leave a review, a 5-star review, may I ask kindly. That will help others find the show as well. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of The Catholic Money Show. Until next time, bye for now.